Madam Speaker, the totality of this process is just another reminder that my colleagues across the aisle are more focused on policy better. Our republic deserves better. The brave men and women of our military, myself included, have fought for the freedom and democracy all around the world. Yet today, my colleagues are eroding, abused power, and was shrouded in secrecy. Those facts could not be more clear. The president committed no crime, broke no laws, and there was no representing the Hoosiers in my district and voting against this impeachment charade. I stand with President Trump and look forward to passing policies that continue to move our country forward.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Committees, the leadership of the Speaker, we found overwhelming evidence Trump invited foreign interests to interfere in our elections for his personal gain, and he then took unprecedented efforts. I'm proud of the courage of new members to do their duty so that for the first time in his privileged life, Donald Trump will be finally. I vote proudly for these 2 articles of impeachment, and then I hope the House retains control of the articles until the Speaker and Leader Schumer can negotiate agreement on process and witnesses. The stage will be open and fair so that Donald Trump will ultimately be held accountable.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from North Dakota.
1.5 minutes to my friend from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn.
Gentleman.
Public hearings began November 13th. Less than a month later, Speaker Pelosi announced articles of impeachment on December 5th, saying that the investigation had revealed enough information to move forward with impeachment. Those days were weekends where hearings weren't happening and the House was not in session. 7 of those days were weekends that the House was in recess, including the week of Thanksgiving. 2 of those days were in flying days where Congress doesn't hold hearings. Used to investigate, debate, and vote on the impeachment of the duly elected leader of our country. No wonder my constituents are upset. 7 days to impeach the President of the United States. Not to mention that this 7-day investigation uncovered as an observer of these hearings, and all I learned is that if you hate someone so strongly and enough people agree with you, that's grounds enough to be impeached. We asked for 12 hours of debate, the same amount of time allotted to this vote I will cast in my tenure as representative isn't asking too much. But no, they want to get out here before Christmas. So it's okay this today, even as I vote against the impeachment. My constituents are calling every day, mad as hell, saying we should be ashamed that this historic chamber has fallen so low to allow something like this to happen. I yield back.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, my friend, the gentleman. Calendar. Madam Speaker, this is not about the clock and the calendar. It is about corruption and the Constitution. It is about a president who abuses power, a continuing threat to the integrity of our next election. The president's defense is built on 3 pillars. And when those 3 pillars fall, the entire defense of the president claim there was no quid pro quo. Well, the evidence is undisputed. President Trump conditioned a White House visit and announcement of the investigations. Ambassador William Taylor wrote at the time, quote, "I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." I asked White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney if there had been a quid pro quo here, and he replied, The president refused to help our ally until he got a personal political favor, and so the first defense falls. Second, the minority once again is undisputed. Ukraine knew about the hold on the military assistance within hours of the president's July 25th call. Laura Cooper of the Department of Defense. The State Department sent 2 emails to the Department of Defense notifying them that Ukrainian officials were asking, where is the aid? The Ukrainians understood exactly what President Trump was asking. He wanted a and so the second defense falls. Third and finally, my Republican friends say the aid was released, but the aid was released only after the president got caught. This aid was lifted on September 11th. This is not evidence of innocence. It is evidence of culpability. The evidence is overwhelming. And when he got caught, he did everything in his power to prevent the American by defying the congressional investigation, by ordering that all requests and demands for information be denied. Security and the integrity of our election at risk, we must act, not because of the clock on the calendar. Continued self-government by the American people. I yield back. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from North Dakota.
Said you have to also believe that President Zelensky is a pathological liar. And with that, I'd yield 1.5 minutes to my friend from South Carolina, Mr. Duncan.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Today, your minds are already made up. The Democrat majority has had a verdict, impeachment, looking for a crime since the inauguration. The Washington Post ran the headline, "The campaign to impeach President Trump has begun." Just 19 minutes. Freshman Congresswoman from Michigan told a group of supporters, "We're going to impeach the mother blank," shortly after she was sworn in. Even Speaker Pelosi admitted last week that the impeachment long before any phone call between 2 world leaders. In fact, 71% of the Democrats on the judicial. The impeachment sham is based on hearsay, conjecture, and opinion. And you know what? You can't even get a speeding ticket in this country based on hearsay. But yet we're going to impeach an American president based on high crimes or misdemeanors committed here. Those are things that constitute impeachable offenses, not hatred or policy disagreements. If memory serves, got their act together, address corruption, straightened out. That was in multiple NDAAs voted on by both parties in this chamber. So in the simplest terms, we're impeaching the president for doing something we told him to do. Serve the American people. While you held secret hearings and depositions behind closed doors in Chairman Schiff's Chamber of Secrets. But the American people have a great sense of fairness, I promise you. They see President Trump. Impeachment based on hearsay and opinion, not facts. It's a sad day in this chamber, the People's House. I yield back.
Members are again reminded to.
I would now inform you that the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, the chair of the Intelligence Committee, will now serve as my designee and will control the remainder of the time on the majority side.
Does the gentleman?
He's my designee.
Okay, does the gentleman from California yield to himself?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I yield to myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank him for the extraordinary job that he has done as chairman of the Judiciary Committee and throughout these difficult proceedings. Madam Speaker, my colleagues, my fellow Americans, I rise to support the impeachment of President Donald J. Trump. Desperate in his fortune, bold in his temper, possessed of considerable talents, having the advantage of military habits, despotic in his ordinary demeanor, known to have scoffed and to mount the hobby horse of popularity, to join in the cry of danger to liberty, to take every opportunity of embarrassing the government, the general government, and bringing it under suspicion, to flatter of the zealots of the day, it may justly be suspected that his object is to throw things into confusion, that he may ride the storm. And Alexander Hamilton, written in 1792. Could we find a more perfect description of the present danger emanating from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? Plated free and fair elections for the highest office in the land, but also afforded the Congress with the power to remove a president who abused the powers of his office for personal gain, by betraying our nation's security, or who sought to undermine our democratic system by seeking foreign intervention in the that the founders could have little imagined that a single president might have done all of these things, except that the evidence has sadly proved this is exactly what this president seems to have predicted the rise of Donald Trump with a staggering prescience. Having won freedom from a government in which ambition was made to check ambition, in which no branch of government would predominate over another, and no man would be allowed to be above the law, including the president. Would the danger be greater than with the officer charged with being our commander-in-chief? Over the course of the last that President Trump abused his power by pressuring the newly elected president of Ukraine to announce an investigation into President Trump's political rival, Joe Biden. Election and enhancing his own prospects for re-election. He didn't even need the investigation to be undertaken, just simply announced to the public. Smear of his opponent would be enough. To effectuate this scheme, President Trump withheld two official acts of vital importance to a nation at war. The president withheld a White House meeting that Ukraine desperately sought to bolster its standing on the world stage. And even more perniciously, President Trump suspended hundreds of millions of dollars of military aid Ukraine into doing his electoral dirty work. The President of the United States was willing to sacrifice our national security by withholding support for in order to improve his re-election prospects. But for the courage of someone willing to blow the whistle, he would have gotten away with it. Instead, he got caught. He tried to cheat, and he got caught. As a candidate in 2016, Donald Trump invited Russian interference in his presidential campaign. For listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. A clear invitation to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. Just 5 hours later, what followed was an immense Russian hacking and dumping operation and a social media disinformation campaign designed to help elect Donald Trump. Not only did candidate Trump get into his campaign plan, his messaging strategy, and then he sought to cover it up. This Russian effort to interfere in our elections didn't deter him. The day after Special Counsel Bob Mueller testified before Congress about Russia, the outcome of our last election, The day after President Trump believed that the investigation into his first electoral misconduct had come to an end, the president was back on the phone urging yet another country election. 3 consecutive days in July tell so much of the story. 3 consecutive. July 24th, the day that Special Counsel Mueller testified before Congress, and President Trump thought he was finally in the clear. July 25th, the day that President Trump got on the phone about military support for that embattled nation that the president had recently frozen, said, "I would like you to do us a favor, though." Efforts in 2020. That was July 25th. And then we come to July 26th, the day Gordon Sondland called. Gordon Sondland, not some anonymous never-Trumper, but $1 million donor to the president's inauguration and his hand-picked ambassador. Trump asked Sondland, the day after this call, what does President Trump ask? What does the president want to know? Did he not? Did he ask how the war with Russia was going? Not a chance. On the phone, his voice loud enough for others to hear, President Trump asked Sondland, and the answer was clear. Sondland assured Trump that the Ukrainian president was going to do it, and that he would. If that wasn't telling enough, my colleagues, in a conversation with Sondland asked if it was true that President Trump didn't give a blank about Ukraine. Sondland agreed, saying the president cared only about. The diplomat noted that there was big stuff in Ukraine, like a war with Russia. The president cared only about big stuff that benefits him personally, like the Biden investigation that Mr. Giuliani was pushing. In that short conversation, 45th president of the United States. He doesn't care about Ukraine or the impact on our national security